coming to this presentation, where we're going to be talking about the font, a new journal for language teachers and language learners. It's called The Font, a literary journal for language teachers. Let me just quickly overview what we're going to do in this presentation. I'm going to quickly introduce what the font's all about, tell you a little bit about it. Then we're going to have Gareth Jones, who is over here, talking a little bit about how the creative writing that we publish in the font can be considered or can be turned into more kind of research or empirical research. After that, we have two of the authors that are featured in our first issue of the font reading some of their material, so that you get an idea of at least a couple of the different types of things that we're doing with the font. And I'm sure you're going to enjoy their short stories as well, very entertaining. And hopefully we'll have a few minutes at the end for question time, and then after that the closing ceremony with the dances and fireworks. So let me tell you how the idea came to fruition. I was reading the New Yorker, and they had an article in it about the Bellevue Literary Review, which probably some of you people who read literary reviews often might be aware of. Has anybody come across that one? It's been going for about 10, 11 years now. And it was started by a doctor who works at the Bellevue Hospital. It's the oldest one in the States. He decided that people in the medical profession had a lot of interesting stories to tell about what they do. And so he started this literary review as a place where they can tell their stories. And they quickly discovered that it has a very kind of broad appeal, that everybody has a story somehow connected to health and well-being or medicine or something. So they started, it became very popular, and they're getting lots of submissions. They now apparently get many times more submissions than the Lancet does. And it got me thinking that language teachers have a lot of good stories too, and I enjoy listening to and reading the stories of people in our profession. And it occurred to me that, you know, this theme is quite a broad one as well, that everybody here, who teaches languages here? Who teaches a language? If you have, who's learned a second language? Everybody else, right? So everybody's got a story to do with that process of trying to learn, trying to grapple with a new language, or teaching a second language. So I started the font as a home for those stories, as a place where people can reflect on and think about and write about and share their experiences teaching and learning languages. What's it about? In the same way as the Bellevue is quite broadly connected to health and medicine, this is also kind of broadly connected to teaching and learning languages, or being a language learner or teacher in Japan or abroad. And we're already getting submissions from people in other countries, teaching languages in other countries, telling their stories as well. I think this audience know what I'm talking about with literary reviews or literary journals. When I've talked about it to other groups, people come up afterwards and say, oh, I've got a paper I'm writing on particular kind of methodology or some research I've been doing, and I have to say, no, that's not the kind of thing we do. But I think this audience knows what I'm talking about. It's not academic papers or empirical research. It's about, it takes the creative literary perspective on what it is that we do. And it's an online journal, and it's published twice a year at this stage, in the fall and in the spring. So what kind of writing? Pretty broadly anything. Short stories, creative non-fiction, essays. We have an anecdotes page I'll tell you more about in a minute. We have a poetry page as well. Any poets here? also have some cartoons, and we've recently added art. Gareth's going to be our visual arts editor. I wasn't intending to do, I couldn't really see how visual arts could come into language teaching, telling those stories, but we had a couple of submissions of really interesting paintings on that theme, so we thought, well, why not include that? Who's it for? It's for people teaching abroad, people teaching languages, people learning languages, people who have had the joy and the frustration of trying to pick up a language abroad.
James, what's the picture from?
What's the picture from? Actually, it's got something to do with negotiation of peace after the... I actually had to put a little patch over the military thing on his shoulder. Keen eye, keen eye. About what? About anything connected to that theme. It's very broad. I presented on this to a kind of a younger audience at a conference, and one came up to me afterwards and said, "How can you write something interesting about teaching English? I can't think of anything." And off he went scratching his head, and then he came up to me later and he said, "I thought of something. I write poetry," he said, and I had a student who wrote an essay for me saying that the two most favourite things in the world were Disneyland, of course, and less obviously Dostoevsky. So he'd written a poem about this student called Disneyland and Dostoevsky, because she liked Disneyland and Dostoevsky. Fantastic, that's great, send it to us. I hope that one's coming soon. I can't wait to see that one. So it's pretty broad. Let me tell you about the sections that we've got in it. We've got the longer prose up to about 5,000 words. I forgot to mention also book extracts. Steve, who will be reading it, we published a part of his book that is particularly connected to language teaching, seeing the whole thing through the eyes of a Japanese kid who has a foreign language teacher come to his village. You'll be hearing more of that in a minute. So we've got the longest section. We've got poetry. That's a gag for the poets there. Is it too small?
No, I read it. Yeah, they took a bit of time.
Yeah.
I might miss the punchline.
Do you want to go back?
No.
We have a section for short anecdotes, just 50 or 100 words of a funny thing happened when I was, travelling and trying to use a language. Funny things do happen. You get words mixed up and end up putting your foot in it. So we've got a lot of interesting little vignettes, funny stories in that section. Cartoons as well. That's probably too small. If you're interested in that one, have a look at the website. We have a page for author biographies, so you can find out a little bit about the people who are writing for the font. You can see it at the very top. We also have a section for what's on, so I get information about writers' workshops and conferences like this, anything that would be of interest to people like yourselves. I post it up there.
But you publish twice a year?
That's right. So, yeah, it's not...
You just have a certain
things well in advance. There's a thing in 3 months' time or 4 months' time. Oh, okay, thank you. We'll probably also have a column in the TLT, the language teacher. They've asked us to submit a proposal to have a regular column in that of our stuff. So we're looking for anybody who's interested in joining the team, editors, organisers, if there's any particularly techie people, I'd love to have some of that kind of help. You can send submissions to the font, submissions at thefontjournal.com. We also have a Facebook page. I've got a flyer you can grab at the end, or you can give me your email as well before you go, and I will send you our newsletter. let me hand over now to Gareth, who's going to talk a little bit about creative writing and research.
Thanks, James. Can I ask you to pass those
Yep.
around, please? Good morning. One of the things James talked to me about as we kind of had conversations about his journal is the idea that, you know, enjoying creative writing, enjoy people's imaginative writing, but also wanting to learn from it. That James felt that he can learn things maybe about his teaching practice, about his own way of doing things through reading other people's not academic writing or pedagogical writing, but simply through their creative writing. We can still learn and know things, and that seems to tie into things that I've been looking at kind of independently through my own interest, my own research, into the idea that creative practice, whether it's writing or painting or music or performance, is actually potentially a research discipline, and it's being taught as such in lots of academic institutions now. So there seemed to be a tie between what James was talking about and what I was interested in. So really what I'm going to do today is just kind of give basically an overview really of some of the literature and some of the ideas that at present and kind of underpin current thoughts about how creativity can be a research discipline within a kind of academic environment. I've broken it down basically into four very simple sections: who, why, what, and how. Who is creative practice as research interesting to? Why do creative practice and see it as research? What is it, and how do we do it? So I'll start off by talking about the who and the why. Maybe they're kind of actually very connected, and then maybe other more interesting, juicy parts come with the what and the how. So I'll try and get through as much as I can here. And then if there's a little more time, maybe I can go back into a little bit more depth. If there's any questions, probably we can talk about it later. So creative practice as research, the idea that through being creative, we can kind of learn and know the world. The idea of research being placed with the kind of critique and creation of knowledge is probably usually one of the definitions of research. So how do we create knowledge by practicing or by doing? How do we critique knowledge by practicing? So who might be interested in this kind of idea? I guess people working in creative arts within kind of academic environments. Anybody who may be creative and want to kind of contextualize their work in some kind of critical way, either kind of historically or in relation to other people doing similar practices or different practices. So it's basically people working with kind of academic environment. Maybe it relates to the font and the idea of trying to show that there's a lot more to offer from this journal, and as well as all the creative ideas, that those creative ideas can actually lead to something that we can't quite determine maybe yet, but by doing it, we learn and we know things about our own practice. That kind of connects to the question of why do creative practitioners want to see their work as research? One very simple answer, when I talked to this with Sue last night, is the idea that more and more people working within the kind of academy are being asked to write research papers. If you're an art student or a visual art or a creative writer within the academy, you'll be asked to write research proposals. And it seems slightly hamstrung. Your department is telling you that they want you to write a research proposal to get the funding, and yet other people within the academy are saying, creative arts, that's not research, that's subjective, that's just kind of personal expression. So you're kind of caught between two positions, really. So that is one of the reasons that is motivating this idea of creative practice as research, the idea that creative practitioners want to assert their work is research. How do they do that? We'll talk about that a little bit later. I guess there's another motivation for creative practice as research, simply that anybody who wants to assert that there is a rigor behind the things that they believe are known within their practice, that it isn't simply subjective, that there are other systems, that it's transferable knowledge, and the things that you do that can help other people in their practice, whether it's the same discipline or another discipline, so that someone doing creative writing can potentially give information and knowledge and insights to people doing English language teaching or as English language students. So there are connections between these different disciplines. So that's a little bit about who and why. Maybe more interesting is what is practice as research? A lot of people ask that question, like, well, what do I do? Well, probably if you're a creative practitioner, you're already doing it in many anyways. And from my evidence, what I saw yesterday, I saw 4 presentations yesterday, and 3 of them were by creative writers. And they all talked about aspects of their work that really were researched. David Gregory was talking about statistics and how he logs and catalogues everything within his practice. How many submissions he sends, how long it takes for that submission to come back, how much money he spent. I mean, he had these incredible spreadsheets that were visually quite stunning. I thought they were works of art in themselves. But the idea is, that's data. That is information. It's not research. Data on its own, I guess, is not research, but it's the beginning. It's the seed of research. If you can reflect or if you interpret that data and you come to some conclusions, then you are researching through your practice. And there's been a lot of talk about this. There are a lot of different theories, and they all kind of, I guess, go back to some kind of, get into kind of philosophical areas, I suppose, because you're asking, well, what can we know through creative practice? And if you ask what can we know, you're asking really what is knowledge? The idea that knowledge is kind of statistical, mathematical, some kind of propositional fact, that maybe is not so relevant to a lot of creative practitioners whose work is kind of more ambiguous and more kind of emotional and affective. And there's a lot of theories that discuss that and assert that knowledge can be ambiguous, knowledge can be emotional, knowledge can be almost paradoxical sometimes. I mean, it's very flexible, very kind of ephemeral, very difficult thing to pin down. People have tried. Maybe from the 20th century, thinkers who talked about phenomenology is probably one pretty strong idea of knowledge. Somehow, in our experience of the world, we know something simply by experiencing it. And some theories are built on that. And one of the most interesting theorists, I think, in this kind of creative area is Barbara Bolt, who takes ideas from philosophy, particularly from Martin Heidegger, and his idea of handleability, that by touching and doing things, we are knowing things before we kind of internalize them and intellectualize them. By doing, we are knowing. And that extends then into a kind of what she calls a kind of a practical knowledge. By doing, we learn something, we know something, we figure something out, and then we make a decision and we do something else. We get into this kind of what she calls a practical cycle of knowing and doing as we learn and things move forward. Another guy, Raymond Williams, talks very much about this. Raymond Williams, the people I'm talking to are actually mentioning the video. Raymond Williams talks about the idea of that by doing we know things, and that making something like a work of art is a very particular and a very special form of knowing, and a very special form of doing, and leads to a very particular kind of knowledge. So there's all kinds of literature that says by doing things, by making things, by the creative process, we are in fact learning and knowing and gaining insight. What kind of insights? Again, it's still perhaps a bit murky, but maybe we can relate research and practice with 2 different propositions. You can have research in practice, so whereby research and practice, you are actually looking at what you do, studying it, and learning about your practice, either to help your own practice or maybe to share with other people, such as this conference here over these 2 days. So your insights will actually be most likely in the actual practice that you do. But there's another kind of relationship as well, this research through practice, where you use your creative practice to learn about other disciplines or other areas of knowledge. 2 examples. David Gregory, I would say yesterday in his talk, if anybody saw it, was giving examples of research in practice. He was showing how he writes, how he submits, how he organizes all the information to build a huge database of information about his practice. I'm sure that's going to help him in his future work, but it can also help other people as he shares it and gives us those insights in his practice. I thought yesterday Anne Slater gave a great presentation about her work, and I could see elements of research through practice there. She was writing about a personal experience of memories of Spain, but she wrote it in such a way that she had to go and do some historical archival research about Spain and its geography and its culture. So she was researching through her practice to find out more about a discipline outside of her own practice. And I'd say, Jared, also, I was very interested to hear you talk about how, I think you said anthropology and your background in identity politics kind of fed into your work. maybe in that kind of creative stew of writing, a new insight into those practices comes out. So again, it's that cyclical kind of movement of another discipline coming into your practice, and gets stewed up with all your imaginative ideas, and gives you maybe insights into that original practice and changes your views. So that is what practice is. Have I got 1 minute? Yeah. So that is basically the what of practice, how we do it. Methodologies. You've got a few choices. This is where it gets very interesting for creative people. That methodologies is wide open. You can use the conventional ones from the sciences, human sciences, natural sciences. For maybe a lot of writers, action research might be relevant. That's something that's coming from kind of education and social sciences research. Experimental forms of research. This is open. You can create new forms of research. Deleuze and Guattari, the thinkers, create this metaphor of the rhizome, this kind of like bubbling, roiling kind of biological growth which can spread in different areas. It doesn't have a beginning, it doesn't have an end, it just kind of grows and cycles. That can be a great model for research. As I'm running out of time, Graham Mort is a great writer on this topic. Graham Mort runs a fantastic program, it sounds very interesting anyway, in Lancaster University, the Transcultural Writing Program. And his ideas break the research process down to 3 different sections. I'm probably not going to have time to talk about that. But that is creative practice. You're doing it, we're all doing it, and we can learn and find insight from it. I'm going to introduce Steve Redford. He's going to read a little from his book. I remember, don't show me. Along the same street, along the same street, along the same road.
Along the same street.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'd like to thank James for publishing an excerpt from my novel Along the Street and the first issue of The Font, and I'd also like to thank him for inviting me to read an excerpt of the excerpt today. The narrator of the novel is Kenta. He's a high school boy living in rural Japan, and in the part I'm going to read, he's relating something he experienced in the late 1980s when he was an 8-year-old boy. I'll read part of the first chapter, which is called What My Grandfather Said, and then skip some stuff, and go to the very end of chapter 8, which is called The Barbarian. Near the end of the reading, a young girl named Rina will appear. It's not evident why she's in this particular excerpt, but it's important to note that the narrator, Kenta, an 8-year-old boy, is maybe becoming sweet on her. And she also has an odd habit of, in class, randomly shouting out strings of English words. So that will also take place. The reading should take about 10 minutes. You with me? Okay. And chapter 1, What My Grandfather Said. Beast, my grandfather said, staring up over the cow shed, up at our mountain. Beasts are what they are. Who? I asked. My cousin Shizuko and I were sitting out on the cedar veranda with him. We were 8 years old. Much later, I would imagine that he had suddenly spotted the flickering eyes of a whole brigade of phantoms. But right then, I only saw that his eyes had moistened, only heard his voice trembling, as I'd never heard it before. I hear an American is coming to your school, he said, turning to us. Be careful. He tapped his chest. Americans, they attack you here. It's a hurt that never heals. A big lump pushed up into my throat, and my grandfather, my Ji-chan, disappeared into the cow shed before either of us kids could say a word. We traded looks of disbelief. We mumbled back and forth a bit. Then I ran home. I flew home. Maybe it was the family genes keeping the difficult stuff in, but no sooner had I spotted Mama in the family room than I knew I couldn't tell her or anyone else what Ji-chan had said. In a daze, I banged back out the door and jogged back across the street. Halfway around Ji-chan's house, I slowed. The cow shed came into view. I snuck up to the open doorway, the big open doorway. I peered in. Ji-chan was leaning over the front rail of one of the stalls, leaning way over. It looked like the rail had bent him in half. It broken him in half. He was muttering to himself, crying a little. I couldn't make out a single word. This was not the Ji-chan I knew. The Ji-chan I knew couldn't be broken like this. I turned away. I walked home. Stick with it. The American strode into the classroom just a step behind Tachikawa-sensei, his belt buckle almost as high as her shoulders. Whether he was a giraffe with big shoulders or an elongated gorilla was hard to say, but clearly he and she were of two different species. As they entered the classroom, the pressure pot with excitement of the class had become spewed out an overwhelming shrill. The American's hair was carrot orange, and his eyes, I would hear others saying later, an emerald green. At the time, all I saw from my desk at the back of the room was that those eyes were slinging out a laser beam that could, if the American so chose, burn a hole right through my forehead. I pushed myself back in my chair. I held one hand up to my hairline, shading my eyes. I spread the other across my chest. It was the best I could do. Tachikawa-sensei introduced him. No one heard her. We were too consumed with his enormous physical presence, with those dazzling eyes. I could only look at him as I would the sun, aslant, squinting. Tachikawa-sensei finished saying whatever she'd been saying and took a step to the side. The American spoke. It was like a cloudburst, gigantic drops splattering down on hot asphalt. One of those rains so furious you wonder if it comes from the gods or the devils. Loud, incomprehensible. My classmates squealed again. Some leapt to their feet. Some, still sitting, stomped their feet. I clutched my Adam's apple. Then the American was whipping from his briefcase a stack of white cards, and my classmates were up on their feet shouting out after him, "Red, yellow, blue, cat, dog, pig, 1, 2, 3, 3 yellow pigs." I stood too, but didn't creep up toward the front as most of the others had. I glanced around at the few others hanging back. Did they know what I knew? They seemed to know something. The American motioned them into teams, pulling first batters up to the front, flashing cards, giving hints, meowing, converting his long, freckly arm into an elephant's trunk, leaping over to the blackboard to tally points. The back of his white, short-sleeved shirt became a sticky sheet of sweat. Soon kids from other classrooms were pushing into the back of the room, and their teachers were peering in through the hallway windows. One of my classmates leapt up and caught the American's bicep and was lifted up into the sky. Another boy jumped for the other arm. Up he went too. My head was getting all messed up. Those boys swinging from his arms were laughing, and the American didn't exactly look as if he were suddenly going to go berserk and bite a chunk out of one of their necks or whip his arms back and smash their heads into the blackboard. Still, those eyes, those biceps, they looked dangerous to me. As a half dozen boys jostled for their chance to scale the side of the American mountain, Tachikawa-sensei stepped in. She made them all sit down. Question time. Hands shot up. Tachikawa-sensei called out a boy's name. The boy stood up. "Do you like music?" We all knew what he had asked. We'd gone through all the questions beforehand. Still, Tachikawa-sensei translated it into Japanese just in case. The American had gotten the English right off, no problem. He pantomimed taking a CD from a plastic case, inserting it into a portable player, lifting the player onto his shoulder. He danced to a beat that only he could hear, strutting from one end of the blackboard to the other and back again. "Love," he wrote on the blackboard, still bouncing with the beat. "I love music. Love," he said, motioning for them to chime in. "Love." He jutted his neck out, pointing to his upper teeth pressed into his lower lip. "Love," he said. Most of my classmates tried, saying they pressed their teeth into their lower lips. "Love, good, good." He flashed 2 thumbs up, danced to the silent beat. Tachikawa-sensei called out a girl's name. "Can you eat natto?" Big head nods. "Yes, yes, I can." He picked up an imaginary bowl, chopsticked up a mouthful of beans, struggled, much to everyone's delight, to break loose the stretchy natto strands. He put the beans to his lips, ate, and fell over on the Tachikawa-sensei's desk, clutching his throat, kicking out his legs, groaning, and he was dead. For 5 seconds, for 10. Then he popped up again. Again he gave us 2 thumbs up, sitting on the desk. Everyone clapped. It was perfect. A broad-shouldered giraffe, an elongated gorilla, dying from one measly mouthful of fermented beans. I knew it, a boy shouted out. Only Japanese can eat natto. Right, Tachikawa-sensei, right? Tachikawa-sensei had been leaning away from the American, as if she feared he might suddenly burst into flames. An embarrassed grin had stretched across her face, and she brought her hand up to hide her teeth. Either she didn't hear the boy's question, or she ignored it. Earlier in the year, a line of boys had been standing at the front of the class giving a report. The boy at the end, waiting his turn, had hopped up and sat on top of Tachikawa-sensei's desk. She had exploded. What do you think you're doing? You don't know the difference between a desk and a chair? People sit at desks, not on desks. No one wants your little butt on their desk. You're not a barbarian, are you? The American's eyes had gotten her, zapped her, dazed her. That's all I could figure. There he was, flattening out his rear end right on top of her desk, and she was doing nothing. And neither were any of the teachers peering in from the hallway. We kids were on our own. And then Rena was calling out, Tachikawa-sensei, I want to be next. Can I ask mine? I looked over. She was standing in her chair, waving her hand high above her head. And then a lot of them were climbing up onto their chairs, waving their arms. But the American already had his eyes on Rena. How could he not? Giraffe, Rena shouted out. Hippopotamus! Persimmon! My head went all bubbly. And then I was getting to my feet, somehow heading for the door. I was too dizzy and dazed to worry what Tachikawa-sensei or my classmates might think. I hurried down the hallway. I stuffed my indoor shoes into my locker. I slung on my outdoor sneakers. And then my poor, befuddled brain imagined the American coming after me. I ran. My honor and delight to introduce the next reader, my friend, longtime resident of Nagoya, Kelly Quinn. He's a university teacher and writer there. Kelly.
All right, thanks. Thanks, James, for inviting me to read. I'm going to read a story called Counseling Mind. Without further ado. I was made class advisor for first-year students. I was responsible for the care and well-being of all students in the first-year class. Last Monday, I met with the parents of a girl who was having trouble in school. Wisely, I had asked a Japanese teacher to help me with the meeting. The Japanese teacher is a sympathetic figure, one of those women who reminds me of my slightly batty grandmother, even though she's only 42 years old. Around 10 a.m., the father showed up in my office. He was wearing gold chains and a purple and black sweater and a lightning bolt design, a gold pinky ring, and a gold nugget watch. The first thing he said was, "Have you seen my daughter? She really ought to be here." The mother was young and attractive. We moved to the Japanese teacher's office. Let's call her Ishikawa. Father, speaking very loud and very fast, "We gotta get Emmy," the daughter, "in here. She really ought to be here." "I'll call her." He whips out a portable phone. Ishikawa says, "She's probably in class. Do you think you ought to call?" Father, "It's okay, I won't talk long." Mother, "It's okay, he won't talk long. And she told me that she didn't have the textbook for that class. Students without textbooks don't go to class, do they?" Ishikawa, "Students without textbooks usually sit in the back of the class." Mother, "Oh, students without textbooks sit in the back. Then it's okay to call." Father, "Emmy, this is your father." "Yes, I'm at school. I'm in some woman's office. You have to come here." "I don't know where the office is. Here, talk to her." And he thrusts the phone at Ishikawa. Ishikawa holds the phone like a high school girl holds the penis of some boy she is not really sure she likes or not. "Hello? Hello? Yes, this is Ishikawa." "Yes, we are in my office. Do you know where that is?" "Well, I'm the teacher who teaches the language lab class. You know, Monday, 3rd period." "Do you know where the language lab is?" Well, it's on the 4th floor. My office is near there, number 405. She returns the phone to the father. Father sets the phone on the table and sits down. You see, the thing is that some girls at this school have been teasing Emmy. I know their names, but I'm not going to say their names. But I know who they are. Sunlight flashes off the gold watch and chain as he shakes his finger at Ishikawa. Emmy does not want to go to school anymore. Mother. She's had some health problems and her life plan might be changing. Father. She does not want to go to school. What happens if she takes some time off from school? Ishikawa goes to her desk and takes out a leave of absence application form. The semester is almost over. If she leaves school now, she'll lose all of her credits. She should finish this semester and then take next year off to think about her life plan. Mother. What are credits? Ishikawa. Well, you get credits for classes you pass, and you need so many credits to graduate. Mother. Like collecting points at the supermarket for free stuff? Ishikawa. Yeah, something like that. Yes. Father. When does the semester end? When are the tests? Ishikawa. Tests begin in January after the new year. Mother. You know the stuff you get from the supermarket is really cheap, low-quality stuff. You're better off saving your money and buying the things you really want. Ishikawa. That's true. They just do it to get you to buy the more expensive brand items. A knock at the door. Father and Ishikawa, together. Come in! They look at each other. Father. Emmy, come in here, sit down. Emmy enters and sits next to her mother. Father. All right, Emmy. Tell these teachers what's going on. Tell them why you haven't been coming to school. Emmy. I. Father. Speak up, Emmy. Open your heart to these teachers. Emmy. Emmy makes low, animal-like noises. Tears well in her eyes. Father. They can't help you if you don't open your heart to them. Ishikawa. You've been absent a lot lately. Is something wrong? Emmy. Well, I was going to come to school today, but... Mother. You did not go to class this morning? Where were you when your father called? Emmy. I was in the cafeteria talking to my friend. I always turn the bell on my phone off in class. If I'd been in class, I couldn't have answered the phone. Mother. Didn't you have your book? If you don't have your book, you can sit in the back of the class. She points to Ishikawa. She says it's okay. I had my book. I just didn't feel good. I was going to take some medicine, but the instructions said, Mother said, she's very weak. In high school, she could never participate in gym class. She's very weak. Emmy. The instructions said, take after eating. So I went to a convenience store and I bought some coffee milk and some Anpan. No, it wasn't Anpan. It was a melon roll. Maybe it was cream. I can't remember. But you have to take care of your health. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything. Father, that's true. Health is the most important. Father, you have to take care of your health. Ishikawa, that's true. If you lose your health, you don't have anything. Me. So you were late because you ate breakfast? Father, that's just a day. That's a special case. Tell them about the girls who are teasing you. Well, Mayumi and... Emmy, don't say the names! Never tell them the names! Anyway, I heard these girls talking about me and saying that I don't have any cheeks and that my face looks funny. Ishikawa. These days, a face with fuller cheeks is considered more fashionable. Ishikawa touches her own face. Emmy, it's not my fault I don't have any cheeks. I look like my father. Father. It's true, I don't have any cheeks. It's too bad she doesn't look like her mother. Her mother has cheeks. Mother. I have cheeks, but she doesn't look like me. She looks like her father. Her father doesn't have any cheeks. When was this? The first week of school. But then they started sending me messages on my portable phone. They sent a picture of me, and it did not have any cheeks. Ishikawa. You can send pictures with a portable phone? Mother, sure, you can send email, check the weather, write messages. Father, you can buy stock, bet on horses, mother and father together. You can do anything with a portable phone. Emmy, I'm thirsty. Ishikawa stands up and moves to the sink. The mother reaches into her large designer bag and removes a plastic bottle containing tea. Emmy seizes the tea and lifts it with both hands to her mouth and drinks like a baby. Mother, she gets thirsty. The mother replaces the cap and puts the bottle back in her bag. Emmy, I get thirsty. She coughs dryly for effect. Ishikawa sits down and Emmy rolls her shoulders. My shoulders hurt. When I feel stressed, my shoulders hurt. Mother, her shoulders hurt when she feels stressed. She can't sleep. Ishikawa, my shoulders hurt when I feel stressed. Mother, I get it right here. The father rubs the back of his neck. Mother, I get headaches when I feel stressed. She rubs above her eyes. Emmy, my shoulders hurt. Without warning, Emmy plunges into her mother's bag and grabs the tea bottle. Again, she lifts it with both hands and drinks. Father, you need to get rid of your stress, Emmy. You need some exercise. Doesn't this college have any clubs? Ishikawa, yes, there are a lot of clubs. Mother, don't act like a child. The mother puts the bottle back into her bag. Ishikawa shows the school handbook and points to the pages containing clubs. Oh, look, they have tennis. Emmy, I can't play tennis. Mother, how about badminton, Emmy? Mother, is badminton good exercise? Father, badminton is very good exercise. There's a lot of running in badminton. Ishikawa, is that so? Father, yeah. Emmy, I don't want to play badminton. It's like tennis. I can't play tennis. Father's portable phone rings. He picks it up and moves into the background talking. Mother, they have swimming. Emmy, I can't swim. Ishikawa, basketball. No. Mother, dance. Emmy, no. Ishikawa, handball. Me, mountain climbing. Everyone looks at me. Father ends the conversation on the portable phone and looks at his watch and sits back down. Emmy, you need to join a club so you can sweat and get rid of your stress so you can sleep at night and come to school. Emmy, let me see. Emmy looks at the handbook. They have karate. I want to do karate. Father, that sounds good then. Karate. Sweat and get rid of your stress. Emmy, I want to do karate. 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 Father looks at his watch again. Okay, we should go. These teachers are busy. We should go. But Emmy, remember these teachers are kind and they will help you. If you ever have any problems, anything at all, you just come to these teachers and they will help you. Emmy, I want to do karate. I want to do karate. I want to do karate. Father, stop acting like an elementary school student. Emmy dives into the bag for the bottle of tea and drinks like before. Ishikawa, you know, the school has a counselor. If you want to talk to someone, you should talk to the counselor. Did you know the school had a counselor, Emmy? Emmy, I know. When we had our health check at the beginning of the year, we took a psychological test. The next week, I got a note from the counselor saying I should come and see her. Did you go and see Miss Tabata? No. Well, if you want to see her, her office is 305. Emmy, I want to see the counselor. I want to see the counselor. I want to see the counselor. Father stands up. We have to go. Stop acting like a child. Emmy, I want to see the counselor. I want to see the counselor. I want to see the counselor. Father, moving out the door. The problem is, we spoiled it. Emmy, I want to see the counselor. I want to see the counselor. I want to see the counselor. Mother, thank you very much. You have been a great help. She bows deeply.
Just a couple of examples of what we have on the font or in the font journal. We've got 5 minutes left. If I could ask the other 3 chaps to come out. If you have any questions for Gareth or either of the authors, we have a few minutes.
Can I ask Steve, when's your story set? What year?
The narrator is a third-year high school student, so that's 1997.
Okay.
But the beginning of things that happened is the late 1980s.
Okay, I was just wondering when.
Yeah.
There are a lot of trade publications for different professions, and I was wondering why you felt compelled to do a whole publication around language teachers, or I haven't taught English since I was just for summer jobs, so I'm not that familiar with what's out there for language teachers, or you seem to be trying to elevate the trade journal to something more artistic and academic, or
more artistic and less academic, perhaps, I think. And in language teaching, I don't think there's anything like this. There are academic journals of various, lots of those, but nothing that really focuses on teachers writing creatively about what it is that we do. So I was saying before that the inspiration came from Bellevue Literary Review, which is for people in the medical profession, but they discovered that it was kind of broad and they were getting a lot of responses, very successful. So
You
I
don't
thought,
have any competition?
no, not that I know of. I mean, does anybody else know of it? No.
It's great.
Thank you.
Gareth, can you do another presentation, maybe in the future? But because yours was too short.
Right.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting, and I want to hear more.
Okay, well, I'd like to. I'm glad a few other people said similar things, so I'd like to.
Yeah, it'd be great to
And I'm happy
actually.
to talk more about it now. I mean, more now, but today I'm not. But yeah, I'd like to.
Please.
Stay in touch.
Yeah, yeah.
Kelly, that was fantastic. Thank you. I just wondering about Emmy. How is this university? Sorry to ask specifically about the story. Is this? She's what, first year university or was this high school?
In the story, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
In the story, she's university, right?
It's a university.
Yeah.
Sort of university.
Last year, did I detect a little bit of Philip Roth there?
I like Philip Roth, but
These guys are, these shenanigans are.
Sorry, I don't know what the broad is.
I mean, I laughed so much, I almost lost.
yeah.
No, really, I thought that was a marvelous dialogue.
Yeah, thank you.
I really
I was reading, I was trying to think of different voices.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it went from Jewish to Irish for a while there.
Yeah, certain point.
So,
Interesting.
it doesn't, I don't think the ethnicity really matters.
Sorry, what was the name of your book?
This I don't even know. along the same street. There's a few copies over there, and if you're interested, there's also postcards. You can take the postcards for.
Who published him?
I did. I have a kind of pseudonym as the publisher's name, but I did. It's called Persimmon Dreams Press, but it's really neat.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Kelly also has a couple of books available, but not so much.
It's not
Not
literature,
so
yeah.
lighthearted.
Yeah, nonfiction.
So, Steve, you actually put your book forward to publishers, did you?
Excuse me?
You actually put your book forward to a publisher? You sent your books to publishers?
I don't think I ever
No?
sent to publishers. I looked for agents for a while, and I
Yeah.
had some agents read things. And,
Oh, okay. But you
did that for
decided
a
to
couple
do
of
it
years.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, and then decided to do it myself.
Do it yourself, yeah.
James, can you tell us what kind of submissions you built?
Well,
It's
I have the
not-
submission
not just
guidelines
academic,
here
right?
that give.
Fiction stuff, what don't you?
It has to be connected to language teaching or language learning in some way. So some kind of reflection on that. Something that would be of interest to people in this profession. Really. So leaving it fairly broad.
So it can be from the point of view of the student or from the teacher.
Yes, yes. We have a couple of stories in the first issue that are written from the perspective of a student in the class.
This one. This one's from that.
Yeah, and there's another one as well.
For the people you're
Very
looking
good.
to volunteer, you're basically looking for computer expertise. So
Computer
people-
expertise would be good, or
Which I don't.
people that would like to help out with spreading the word, doing some PR type things.
Okay.
If you've got any expertise, we'd like to hear from you.
The editorial stuff and so on. And where
Oh,
are
editors.
you located?
I'm in Kobe.
You're in Kobe. So it doesn't matter if people live in a different prefecture? and
Oh no,
that's-
we've
right.
got people from all over, from Hokkaido to
Okay.
China to, yeah.
Okay.